Captain Eli Mercer stood by the shattered window of a dilapidated command center overlooking the ruins of New Phoenix. Once a bustling urban hub, now it was just a ghost of ash and rubble under the setting sun. His gaze swept the horizon, alert for any signs of enemy movement in the dying light. "Area's still clear, sir," reported Lieutenant Harlan, his voice a cautious murmur. "Good, but stay sharp. It's the quiet moments that are the most treacherous," Eli replied, his voice heavy with the weariness of war. Harlan nodded and disappeared back into the shadows of the room, blending into the dim background. Eli continued to stare out at the city. Turning away from the window, he stepped over the debris littering the floor, each crunch a stark reminder of the city's destruction. The room they had claimed as their headquarters was in what used to be a government building. Now it housed their desperate resistance. Maps covered the walls, a tapestry of their grim reality with zones marked in urgent red, each one a battleground. In the midst of the room, a flickering hologram projector cast ghostly lights over a table, outlining their last strongholds of human defense. "Status report," Eli commanded, his eyes narrowing as he studied the blinking lights on the map. Sergeant Jace, a strategist with a knack for technology, manipulated the controls. "Eastern sectors are holding for now, and there might be a lead on the artifact," he said, his voice cautious yet hopeful. Eli's focus sharpened. "Where?" "Beneath the Razorback Ridge, deep within enemy territory," Jace pointed on the map, his finger hovering over a particularly dangerous red zone. Eli clenched his fists. "Assemble the team. We move at first light. If there's a chance this artifact exists, we have to find it." The command center buzzed with renewed urgency as the team prepared for the mission. Coordinates were confirmed and routes planned. Eli watched the preparations, his silhouette casting a long shadow in the flickering light. The mission was perilous, but the artifact was rumored to possess power enough to change the course of their war. As the sun dipped below the horizon, night took its watch. Eli cast one more glance through the window. The ruins lay silent, but his mind raced with the possibilities of what tomorrow might bring. This war had taken much from him, from all of them, but it had not yet taken their resolve. With a final nod to the night, Eli turned back to his maps. The stakes were high, and the risk was great, but the fire that drove him now was more than just a fight for survival. It was a fight for reclamation, for turning the tide in a war that had seemed unwinnable. Tonight, they planned. Tomorrow, they would either find their hope or die trying. Before dawn broke, Captain Eli Mercer and his strike team assembled at the edge of the ravaged city, their silhouettes stark against the graying sky. A cold breeze stirred the dust around their boots, carrying the scent of damp earth and burnt metal, a constant reminder of the battles fought and lost. Lieutenant Harlan checked each member's gear with a practiced eye. "All set, Captain. We move on your mark." Eli nodded, his senses alert. He could taste the sharp tang of adrenaline that morning, mixed with the bitter remnants of their rationed coffee. "This isn't just another skirmish," he whispered, more to himself than to his team. "Stay sharp and watch each other's backs." They moved out, their movements swift and silent, blending into the shadows as they navigated through the ruins. The city was behind them now, and ahead lay miles of no man's land, marked by craters and scattered debris under a pale sky that promised rain. Sergeant Jace led the way, his eyes scanning for signs of the enemy. Every so often he would pause, raising his hand to halt the team as he inspected suspicious disturbances in the mud or listened for the telltale crack of a twig in the distance. The journey was tense, each step a calculated risk. They communicated in hand signals mostly, preserving the quiet, their breaths visible in the cool air. The only sounds were the distant calls of birds, eerily out of place in the desolate landscape, and the soft rustle of their gear. As they approached Razorback Ridge, the terrain became more treacherous. Rocky outcrops provided cover but also made the ascent challenging. Eli felt the rough texture of stone under his hands as he climbed, the sharp edges biting into his palms. Harlan pointed to a narrow crevice between two massive boulders. "Through here. It should lead us straight to the target area." The crevice was tight, forcing them to enter single file. The air grew cooler as they progressed, the narrow walls blocking out the early morning light. Moisture dripped from above, creating a slick path that threatened to send them sliding back with every step. Finally, they emerged on the other side, greeted by the sight of Razorback Ridge rising ominously before them. The ground here was softer, the smell of moss strong in their nostrils as they tread carefully over the thick green carpet. Eli paused, taking in the sight of the ancient geological formation. "This is it," he said, his voice low but clear. "Jace, do we have the exact location?" Jace consulted his device, then pointed towards a jagged opening at the base of the ridge. "There, that's where the scans showed anomalies consistent with the artifact." The team advanced towards the opening, their senses heightened. Eli could hear his heart pounding in his ears, each beat a drum of anticipation and fear. They reached the cave entrance, the air cool and musty as they peered into the darkness. "Light it up," Eli ordered. Harlan activated a handheld light, its beam cutting through the darkness, revealing the cavern's secrets. As the light settled on the far wall, their eyes widened at the sight of an intricate metallic structure, partially embedded in the stone, a technology unmistakably alien and untouched by time. "This is it," Eli breathed, a mix of awe and triumph in his voice. "Let's see what we've awakened." As the beam from Harlan's light swept across the cavern walls, it caught the metallic structure in its embrace, revealing a complex network of geometric patterns that shimmered like a spider web coated in morning dew. The artifact was enigmatic, its surface a tapestry of ancient alien script, interspersed with soft glows of light that pulsed gently, like the slow heartbeat of a dormant beast awaiting revival. Eli stepped forward, his boots crunching on small, sharp crystals scattered across the cave floor. The air was thick with the musk of damp earth and the tang of metal, a scent that spoke of long-sealed secrets and forgotten histories. He reached out, his fingers hovering inches from the artifact's surface, feeling the faint warmth radiating against his skin. "Careful, Captain," Jace murmured from behind, his voice a soft ripple in the still air. "We don't know what triggers it might have." Eli nodded, his gaze fixed on the patterns. "There's a story here," he said, tracing the lines with his eyes. "This wasn't just left here, it was placed with purpose." They circled the structure, taking in every detail. Harlan, ever watchful, noted a series of small indentations that formed a crude circle around the base. "Looks like an interface," he suggested, pointing them out with the tip of his light. "Let's find the key to this puzzle," Eli decided, his tone resolute. The team spread out, searching the surrounding area for anything that could resemble a key or tool. Minutes ticked by, filled only with the sounds of their methodical searching, the scrape of stone, the soft thud of boots on earth, the distant drip of water. The cave seemed to hold its breath with them, waiting for the moment of revelation. Sergeant Jace, rummaging through a pile of debris near the entrance, paused as his hand brushed against something unlike the surrounding rocks. It was smoother, colder, deliberately shaped. He pulled it free, dust and small pebbles clattering to the floor. It was a disc, metallic and adorned with the same geometric patterns that covered the artifact. "Captain, think this might be what we're looking for," Jace called out, holding the disc up to catch the light. Eli returned to examine the find, a flicker of excitement passing through his eyes. "Let's see if it fits those indentations." Together, they approached the artifact. Eli took the disc from Jace and aligned it with the circle of indentations. As he pressed it down, the artifact came alive with light. The geometric patterns began to flow like liquid gold, converging towards the center where the disc had been placed. The cave vibrated softly under their feet as the artifact awakened, its glow intensifying. Colors swirled within the lights, blues and greens dancing with silvers and golds, a celestial ballet frozen in metal and stone. Then abruptly, the movement stilled. The lights dimmed but did not go out, now steady and holding a promise. A low, resonant tone filled the cave, not loud, but omnipresent, as if the artifact was finally speaking after millennia of silence. Eli and his team stood transfixed, the weight of the moment settling around them like a cloak. This was no mere weapon or tool, it was a legacy, a guardian perhaps, meant to be found when most needed. "We need to understand this, quickly," Eli stated, his voice carrying a mixture of command and awe. "Whatever secrets this holds, they're not just ancient history, they're the key to our survival." As they stood around the artifact, its soft glow the only light in the darkening cave, the reality of their discovery began to dawn on them. They had awakened something powerful and mysterious, and their journey was only just beginning. As the low, resonant tone faded, replaced by the silence that once again enveloped the cave, Eli and his team stood in awe, their eyes fixed on the artifact that now seemed to be a part of the cave itself, its lights dim but steady. The air was charged with an electric anticipation, heavy with the musk of the ancient cave mixed with the metallic tang emanating from the artifact. "Let's document everything. This could be monumental," Eli instructed, his voice echoing slightly off the damp walls. The team sprung into action, Harlan pulling out a compact recording device, beginning to catalog the intricate designs and pulsating lights of the artifact. Jace, meanwhile, couldn't tear his eyes away from the glowing disk. He ran his fingers over the symbols that seemed to pulsate under his touch, their cool surface contrasting with the warmth radiating from the artifact. "There's a rhythm to these lights, like a heartbeat. It's as if the artifact is alive, breathing in the stale cave air," he murmured, more to himself than anyone else. As they worked, the subtle sound of dripping water provided a rhythmic backdrop, each drop echoing in the small chamber like the ticking of a clock. The cave's atmosphere thickened, the walls closing in as they bore witness to a secret millennia in the keeping. Suddenly the artifact flickered, its lights brightening for a moment, casting long shadows behind Eli and his team. The disk, now fully integrated into the artifact's base, emitted a series of soft clicks, like the unlocking of an ancient vault. The ground beneath their feet rumbled gently, a subtle but unmistakable vibration that sent a shiver up each man's spine. "Did you feel that?" Harlan asked, steadying himself against a nearby rock. His voice carried a mix of excitement and caution. "It's reacting. Stay alert," Eli commanded, his gaze never leaving the artifact. He reached out slowly, his hand hovering over the disk. He hesitated, then, with a decisive movement, pressed down firmly. The cave responded. The walls began to shimmer with a soft light, revealing hidden symbols that mirrored those on the artifact. It was as if the entire cave was coming to life, a dormant energy awakening at the touch of its rightful keyholder. "This isn't just a chamber, it's a gateway," Jace exclaimed, his voice tinged with wonder. The symbols on the walls seemed to dance before their eyes, telling a story older than time itself, of civilizations lost and the guardianship of unimaginable power. As the lights stabilized, the air in the cave shifted, becoming crisper, as if electrified by the awakening of the ancient technology. The artifact now hummed with a power that was palpable, its vibrations resonant with the promise of secrets long hidden. "We need to understand what we're dealing with," Eli stated, his tone serious but filled with an undertone of reverence. "This could change everything." The team nodded, each man aware of the weight of their discovery. They were no longer just soldiers in a war. They were custodians of a legacy that bridged galaxies and epochs. As they continued their examination, the cave seemed to embrace them, its ancient stones a silent testament to the gravity of their discovery. Outside, the first light of dawn began to break, casting a new day over the world above, a world oblivious to the fact that just beneath its surface, a new chapter was beginning. As dawn's first light seeped into the cave, mixing with the artificial glow emanating from the walls, Eli and his team felt the weight of history pressing around them. The symbols on the cave walls now clearly narrated a tale of cosmic significance, yet the full meaning remained tantalizingly out of reach. Jace, absorbed in translating the alien script, paused and stepped back, squinting at a particularly complex glyph. "It's not just a guardian, it seems to be a custodian of balance," he announced, his voice echoing slightly in the confined space. "According to this, the artifact ensures the stability of something immense." Eli, rubbing his stubbled chin, mulled over the words. Stability of what? A planet? A galaxy? More like a reality, Jace responded, his brow furrowed in concentration. He gestured at the flowing symbols that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. It's vague, Captain, but there's an implication of great power, potentially catastrophic if misused. Harlan, checking his equipment, interjected with a skeptical tone. Sounds like a myth wrapped in a riddle, sir. Are we sure this isn't just some elaborate alien hoax? Eli shot him a sharp glance, then turned his attention back to the artifact. The cool air of the cave brushed against his face, carrying a hint of something ancient, a whisper of secrets long buried under stone and silence. We need more proof, he decided. The artifact itself was their best clue. Approaching the structure, he noticed the glow from its core had shifted in hue, now a deep, resonant blue. He placed his hand near the disk, not touching it, feeling the air thrum with energy just millimeters from his skin. As if reacting to his presence, the artifact emitted a series of low, musical tones, different from any sound it had made before. The tones seemed to resonate directly with the nervous system, each note vibrating through their bodies, filling them with a sense of urgency. This isn't just technology, it's something else, Eli muttered, stepping back. His team gathered around him, each man's face etched with a mix of awe and apprehension. Jace's voice was low, almost reverent. There's a legend among the stars about a device capable of shaping the fabric of reality, used by an ancient civilization to maintain harmony in the universe. Could this be it? The possibility hung in the air, dense and potent. The cave felt suddenly claustrophobic, its ancient stones witnesses to their monumental discovery. Eli knew the implications were massive, not just for the war, but for the very order of existence. Let's gather all the data we can. This goes beyond any war, Eli stated firmly. We're dealing with something that could alter the course of history. As they resumed their work, the cave seemed to pulse with a newfound energy, the walls shimmering softly in the morning light that now flooded the chamber. The mystery of the artifact deepened, its secrets just out of reach, promising revelations that could change everything. Outside, the world remained unaware of the discovery that might soon redefine their understanding of reality itself. As the first rays of the morning light faded into the consistent glow of the cave, the team's sense of urgency grew. The artifact, with its pulsating blue core and the chamber's resonating symbols, now seemed less like a relic and more like a gateway to a profound mystery. Eli, feeling the pressure of the unknown, called for a cautious approach to their next steps. We're walking on uncharted ground, Eli voiced firmly, his tone mixing resolve with caution as he addressed his team. The cold, moist air of the cave carried his words with a gravity that matched their situation. Each breath they took was a mix of damp earthiness and a subtle metallic tang that the artifact exuded, reminding them of the blend of natural and otherworldly elements at play. Harlan, typically skeptical, now wore an expression of deep contemplation. He passed his hand over the surface of the artifact, not touching but close enough to feel the thrum of its energy. Every time we think we've seen it all, he murmured, his words barely audible over the soft echo of their isolated environment. Jace, ever the scholar, continued his examination of the glyphs, his fingers tracing the air inches from the ancient script. These symbols suggest a duality, creation and destruction, holding the fabric of reality in balance, he explained, his voice laced with excitement and fear. It's as if this device was meant to intervene at critical moments. The cave's atmosphere thickened with the implication of Jace's words. If he was right, they had stumbled upon a tool of immense power, capable of altering fundamental realities. The light from the artifact cast long, dancing shadows across the cave walls, creating a visual symphony that mesmerized and intimidated. Eli, turning his focus back to the team, set a clear directive. We document everything. No detail is too small. This, whatever this is, might be the key not just to ending the war, but to understanding the broader machinations of the cosmos. The team set to work with renewed vigor, their equipment humming softly as they recorded, measured, and analyzed. The sound of their tools and their hushed, reverent discussions filled the space, blending with the natural acoustics of the cave to create a symphony of scientific pursuit. As they worked, the artifact continued to reveal its complexities. Without warning, the pulsating lights shifted, cycling through a spectrum of colors that bathed the cave in surreal hues. The air vibrated with the artifact's power, each pulse sending a wave of energy that resonated through their bones. "This thing doesn't just balance, it controls," Jace concluded, stepping back from the panel with wide eyes. "It's not just a passive guardian, it's an active participant." Eli absorbed the implications, his mind racing. "We need to understand its intentions," he stated, his voice carrying a mix of command and curiosity. "And we need to be prepared for the possibility that its activation could have unintended consequences." As the session drew to a close, the team packed their equipment, each member lost in thought. The cave, once merely a structure of stone and silence, now felt alive, almost conscious, as if it were watching them, assessing their worthiness to uncover its ancient secrets. As they exited the cave, the light of the outside world seemed harsh, overly bright. They squinted against the sunlight, but the image of the glowing artifact lingered in their vision, a haunting afterimage that promised more revelations and perhaps more responsibilities than any of them had ever imagined. Stepping out of the cave, the team was momentarily blinded by the daylight's assault after hours in the subdued luminescence of the artifact's chamber. The world outside seemed stark, the colors overly vivid, as if the morning had decided to use a bolder palette just to contrast their night spent underground. The air was crisp, a sharp reminder of the world moving on, indifferent to the enormity of what they had discovered. Eli squinted against the light, his mind racing with the implications of the artifact's capabilities. "Let's regroup at base. We need to assess our findings and plan our next move carefully," he instructed, his voice firm despite the underlying churn of his thoughts. As they trekked back through the wasteland that bordered the cave, the silence among them was dense, each member of the team lost in contemplation. The ground beneath their feet, littered with the remnants of a forgotten battle, crunched and shifted, echoing the tumult within each of them. Harlan was the first to break the silence as they navigated through a particularly treacherous patch of rubble. "We're not just dealing with a weapon or a shield. This thing could rewrite reality. What are we going to do with that kind of power?" Eli glanced back at him, his eyes shaded by his hand against the glaring sun. "First, we verify. We test. We ensure we understand exactly what we're dealing with before we make any decisions." Back at their makeshift base, a flurry of activity greeted them. Technicians and other team members moved about, their tasks momentarily forgotten as they looked up expectantly. The air was thick with the scent of oil and metal, the usual din of machinery now subdued as Eli and his team entered. Jace headed straight for the lab, his steps quick, the artifact's images captured on his device burning a virtual hole in his pocket. "I'll start with cross-referencing the symbols with known databases. We need to understand the language if we're going to understand the intent." Eli nodded, then turned to address the rest of the team gathered around. "This discovery could change everything, but we proceed with caution. No leaks, no rumors. We control this until we know for certain what it's capable of." The team dispersed to their respective duties, the weight of potential discovery grounding their movements. Eli walked over to the large table that served as their meeting point, maps and screens displaying data spread across it. He traced a route back to the cave on one of the maps, his finger pausing over the location as if he could feel the artifact's pulse through the paper. Later, as the sun began to set, painting the sky with strokes of orange and pink, Eli stood outside, his eyes on the horizon. The day had brought revelations that could alter the course of their future, yet the setting sun reminded him that no matter how significant their discovery, the universe remained vast and indifferent. The cool evening breeze carried the faint sound of the bass settling for the night, the occasional clank of metal, the distant voices of his team discussing their next steps. It was a symphony of the mundane, grounding, and strangely comforting amid the storm of possibilities unleashed by the artifact. Eli turned back inside, his resolve solidifying. They were on the brink of something extraordinary, but he was determined to steer them through it with prudence and care. Tomorrow the test would begin, and the true nature of their discovery would start to reveal itself. As dawn crept over the horizon, Eli reviewed the overnight data from the initial tests conducted on the artifact. The lab was a hive of controlled chaos, screens flickering with streams of data that only a few could interpret, yet each measurement was a crucial piece of the puzzle. The artifact sat inert, surrounded by equipment that monitored its every quantum fluctuation, the air tinged with the sharp scent of electrical discharge that spoke of unseen energies being measured and harnessed. Anything. Eli's voice cut through the low murmur of conversations, drawing Jace's attention from a particularly dense set of readouts. Jace shook his head, his expression a mix of frustration and intrigue. It's like trying to read a book where half the pages are invisible. We see the effects, the changes in energy patterns, but the cause, the source, still a mystery. Eli frowned, absorbing the news. The gentle clinking of coffee cups and the soft tapping of keyboards provided a mundane backdrop to the extraordinary discussion. "Keep at it," he instructed, turning to gaze at the artifact. It sat silent, its surface occasionally catching the light in a way that made it seem as if it were softly pulsating. Outside, the base stirred to life, the gritty smell of morning coffee mingling with the metallic tang of machinery. Soldiers and scientists alike moved with purpose, each aware that the day could bring a breakthrough or a setback. Such was the nature of their work. Later, Eli convened a meeting in the main tent, the air inside heavy with the anticipation of new findings. Harlan reported on the security measures, his usual robust tone subdued by the gravity of their task. "Perimeter's been reinforced and all communication lines are secure. If anyone's listening, they're not hearing anything from us." "Good." Eli nodded, his attention shifting as Jace stepped forward. A series of images displayed behind him, showing complex patterns that none outside the room could hope to understand. "These patterns are not random. They're almost anticipatory," Jace explained, pointing to a sequence where the lights intensified just before a new data set was received. "It's as if the artifact is aware, reacting to our tests." The room fell silent, each member processing the implications. The artifact's potential sentience could mean it was more than just a tool or weapon. It might be a custodian of knowledge, guarding its secrets until it deemed them worthy of discovery. Eli cleared his throat, breaking the tense atmosphere. "We proceed with respect. Caution. This isn't just technology. It might be a form of life." As night fell, the air around the base was crisp, the stars overhead shining with a clarity that spoke of the vastness of the universe. Eli stood outside, his eyes not on the stars but on the ground. The dirt underfoot, the gentle whisper of the wind. It all seemed so trivial, yet so profoundly grounding in the face of the cosmic enigma housed just meters away. Inside, the team continued their work, the artifact occasionally casting shadows that danced across the tent walls. Every shadow, every flicker of light suggested depth and movement, hinting at dimensions of understanding they had yet to reach. Tomorrow they would delve deeper, pushing further into the mystery. For now, though, they watched, waited, and wondered, each heartbeat a silent echo in the vastness of what lay ahead. Under the veil of night, the base remained a beacon of activity, the buzz of concentrated effort replacing the usual nighttime quiet. Eli, pacing outside the main tent, inhaled deeply, the night air crisp with a hint of pine from the surrounding forest, a sharp contrast to the sterile ambiance inside. Inside, the artifact continued to puzzle the team. With each test, it revealed new layers of complexity, responding not just to physical inputs but seeming to anticipate their next steps. Jace, with furrowed brow, displayed the latest sequence of reactions on the screen. "Look at this." He pointed to a series of rapid fluctuations in the artifact's energy output. "It's like it's trying to communicate, using a pattern we just can't quite decode yet." Eli rubbed his eyes, fatigue battling curiosity. Could it be mirroring our own algorithms? Responding in kind to the way we're probing it? Possible, Jace mused, his eyes not leaving the screen. "I need to adjust our approach. Maybe simplify the inputs, see if it responds more clearly to basic stimuli. As dawn approached, the artifact cast a dim glow, its light spilling softly across the lab's floor, creating long, dancing shadows that played across the tense canvas walls. Harlan watched from a distance, his earlier skepticism slowly morphing into a guarded respect. "It's like it's alive," he whispered to no one in particular, his voice a mixture of wonder and unease. The team gathered for an early morning briefing, the tent filled with the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingling with the ever-present undercurrent of electricity and metal. Eli, standing at the head of the table, addressed his team. "We're missing something fundamental here. This isn't just alien technology, it's almost sentient. Let's tread carefully, recalibrate our equipment, and approach this as if we're dealing with a living being." The morning's work began with Jace implementing simpler, more rhythmic tests. The artifact's responses measured and recorded with painstaking precision. The data streamed in, flowing like a digital river across the monitors, each pulse and wave of energy a piece of the ever-expanding puzzle. Later, as the sun climbed higher, bathing the base in golden light, the artifact seemed to bask in the warmth. Its outer shell, cool to the touch, retained a vibrancy that belied its ancient origin. Eli, observing this, noted how the light played off its surface, casting prismatic colors on the lab's utilitarian walls. "It reacts to sunlight," he noted aloud. "Add that to the log. It's energy sensitive. Sunlight seems to stimulate it." The day passed with the team absorbed in their work, the artifact slowly revealing its nature not through overt displays but through subtle, almost shy interactions. As evening approached, the team prepared for another night of observation, the artifact now less of an enigma, more a mysterious new ally. Eli ended the day with a walk outside, the setting sun stretching his shadow long and thin across the ground. The base, quiet now with contemplative anticipation, stood ready for whatever secrets the night might unveil. The artifact, a silent sentinel in their midst, promised more revelations with each passing hour, each test a step deeper into the unknown. As the shadows of the evening stretched across the base, Eli found himself staring at the artifact, now under the dim lights of the lab. Its surface reflected a soft glow, seemingly pulsating in rhythm with the fading daylight. The gentle rustle of the wind outside blended with the distant sounds of the team members settling for the night, creating a backdrop of serene yet focused activity. In the lab, Jace continued his work, his fingers deftly adjusting the instrumentation. The artifact responded with a series of light patterns, each flash a potential clue in their ongoing dialogue with this enigmatic entity. "Notice how it reacts when we replicate the sunlight frequency," Jace murmured, his focus intense as the light from the artifact brightened briefly in acknowledgement. Eli leaned in closer, his senses tuned to the subtle changes in the air around the artifact. The scent of ozone was fleeting as the electrical equipment operated at full capacity, providing a sterile tang that filled the room. "It's like it understands us, trying to communicate through these patterns," he reflected aloud, his voice a mix of awe and determination. Harlan, who had been reviewing the security footage, looked up, his earlier skepticism softened by the day's revelations. "Maybe it's not just responding randomly. Could it be reflecting our own actions back at us?" he suggested, the idea hanging in the air like the cool night breeze that occasionally whispered through the open windows of the lab. As the night deepened, the base became quieter, the only sounds now the occasional clinking of equipment and the soft, rhythmic tapping of Jace's keyboard. The artifact, bathed in a pool of artificial light, cast shadows around the lab that seemed to play on the walls, creating a dance of darkness and light that mesmerized anyone who watched. The team regrouped in the early hours, huddled around the main table strewn with maps and digital displays showing the artifact's reactions. It's adapting, evolving every time we interact with it, like it's learning, or maybe awakening, Jace proposed, scrolling through the latest data, which illustrated an increase in the complexity of the artifact's light sequences. Eli rubbed the stubble on his chin thoughtfully. "If that's the case, we need to be ready for any new behaviors. It might not just passively give us data. It could start demanding its own." Outside, the night was clear, the stars bright pinpoints in the sky, their ancient light a stark contrast to the newness of the discovery inside the lab. The crisp air carried a hint of pine and the earthy aroma of the forest surrounding the base, grounding Eli in the reality of their remote location. As dawn approached, bringing with it the first light of what promised to be a revealing day, the artifact pulsed softly, its glow steady and more pronounced. The team watched in silent anticipation, every sensor and camera trained on the ancient device, capturing each moment of its increasingly vivid expressions. Eli stood back, his eyes never leaving the artifact. "Keep everything documented," he instructed quietly, the weight of their responsibility pressing upon him. "Whatever happens, we maintain control and proceed with caution. This is new ground we're breaking." With the new day, the mystery deepened, the artifact seemingly on the brink of some significant change. The team was poised on the edge of potentially groundbreaking discovery, every test a step into the unknown, every observation a thread in the larger tapestry of cosmic knowledge they were slowly unraveling. As the dawn's early light streamed into the lab, bathing the artifact in a warm golden glow, Eli watched the shadows recede, replaced by a heightened clarity around the edges of the ancient device. It appeared more distinct now, its intricate patterns etched deeply in its surface, shimmering subtly as if reacting to the touch of sunlight. "The artifact is absorbing the light," observed Jace, his eyes fixed on the sensors that lined the walls of the lab. Each sensor flickered with new data, the air alive with the scent of anticipation and freshly brewed coffee that mingled with the sterile sharpness of electronic equipment. Harlan stood slightly apart, his attention divided between the monitors displaying external camera feeds and the artifact itself. "We're not just observing it. We're part of this experiment, whatever it is," he muttered, his voice tinged with a mixture of awe and apprehension. His remark hung in the air, a reminder of their deepening involvement in something far beyond their original mission. Eli paced slowly around the artifact, his footsteps silent on the cool concrete floor. He reached out, stopping just short of touching the surface, feeling the air pulse with a palpable energy that seemed to emanate from within the device. Every interaction, every response, it's cataloging us, learning from us. Jace nodded, tapping a sequence into his tablet, causing the artifact to emit a series of soft, colorful bursts of light that reflected off the walls, casting the lab into a surreal tableau. "It's mirroring our inputs now with greater complexity. It's not just echoing, it's evolving its responses." The team gathered around the central table, poring over the latest data streams that charted the artifact's activities. "Look at this pattern," Jace pointed out, highlighting a particularly intricate series of light pulses. "It's almost like a language. We're getting close to a breakthrough." Outside, the world continued unabated. The sound of the morning breeze rustling through the leaves blended with the distant calls of morning birds, creating a symphony of the natural world that contrasted sharply with the high-tech endeavor unfolding in the lab. As midday approached, the artifact's responses grew even more nuanced. The light it emitted now had a rhythm that seemed almost intentional, as if it were trying to communicate specific ideas or emotions. "Are we sure we want to continue down this path?" Harlan asked, his voice a low rumble of concern. "We're possibly opening a door we don't know how to close." Eli considered this, his gaze returning to the artifact. "This is why we're here," he finally said, determination stealing his voice. "To discover, to learn, but let's not forget caution." The afternoon wore on, and with each passing hour, the artifact seemed to grow more vibrant, its colors richer and more pronounced. The air around it vibrated with an unspoken energy, tantalizing and mysterious, pulling them deeper into the enigma. As evening approached, Eli made a decision. "We need to prepare for any outcome, increase security, double-check all data backups, and let's set up a controlled test environment. Tomorrow, we push harder." The team nodded, their faces a mix of excitement and nervousness. The artifact, silent yet eloquent in its mystery, continued its luminous display as night fell, the lab bathed in its otherworldly light, each pulse a beat of the unknown that awaited them. Under the cloak of night, The base was eerily silent, except for the periodic chirping of crickets that penetrated the still air with their rhythmic song. Inside the lab, the artifact continued its mesmerizing dance of colors, now casting a hypnotic display of lights that flickered across Eli's focused expression. He stood observing, his senses fully engaged in the evolving spectacle before him. This thing isn't just reacting randomly. It's almost as if it's trying to speak to us, Eli whispered, his words barely audible over the soft rustle of papers and the distant murmur of the night wind against the tent fabric. Jace, busy at a terminal, adjusted the parameters of their test, his fingers moving with deliberate precision. I'm introducing a series of controlled stimuli based on the patterns we observed. Let's see if it replicates or evolves the responses, he said, not taking his eyes off the screen. As he inputted the data, the artifact's colors shifted, turning from vibrant blues and greens to a series of deep purples and oranges, each hue bleeding into the next like a canvas being painted in real time. The air in the lab grew noticeably cooler as the artifact's surface seemed to absorb the heat around it, leaving a chill that made Harlan pull his jacket tighter around him. Harlan glanced at the monitors, his usual stoic demeanor giving way to intrigue. It's like watching a brain think, he commented, his voice a blend of awe and uncertainty. Outside, the moon cast a silvery glow over the landscape, the shadows of the trees stretching out like dark fingers across the ground. The scent of pine was more pronounced at night, mixing with the earthy aroma of the forest floor to create a natural perfume that contrasted sharply with the sterile environment inside the lab. Back inside, as the early hours of the morning crept in, the artifact suddenly stilled, its lights dimming to a soft glow that barely illuminated the surrounding area. The sudden change caught everyone off guard, prompting a hushed silence to fall over the room. Eli stepped closer, his eyes narrowed in concentration. Did it shut down? He queried, breaking the silence. No, it's more like it's resting, or maybe processing, Jace responded, his voice low and thoughtful as he checked the readings, which showed a significant drop in energy output, but no cessation of activity. The team remained vigilant, watching the artifact intently as the first hints of dawn began to lighten the sky outside. The cool air of the morning seeped into the lab, carrying with it the fresh, crisp scent of a new day. As the sun rose, casting beams of light through the lab's open doors, the artifact awakened once more, its lights beginning to pulse gently, then gaining momentum until it was once again a vibrant display of undulating colors. We need to be ready for anything, Eli stated firmly, addressing his team. Today, we push the boundaries. We see how far this communication can go. The team nodded, their faces set with determination as they prepared for another day of groundbreaking tests. The artifact, now glowing warmly in the morning light, seemed almost alive, its colors dancing playfully across the lab walls, beckoning the scientists to delve deeper into its mysteries. As the sun climbed higher, casting stark shadows across the lab's interior, Eli mapped out a comprehensive test strategy designed to engage the artifact more directly than before. He detailed each phase on the central display, ensuring every team member was synced with the day's ambitious objectives. Today, we shift from passive observation to active engagement, Eli announced, pointing to the flowchart that outlined their new approach. We've seen that it responds to light patterns and changes in environmental conditions. Now, let's see how it reacts to specific controlled stimuli that mimic these variables. Jace nodded, pulling up a series of algorithms on his screen. We'll start with light frequencies, mimicking sunrise to sunset transitions. It's shown fluctuations during these times, possibly a built-in response mechanism that we can tap into. Harlan, tasked with monitoring the artifact's physical responses, adjusted the sensors to measure minute changes in temperature and electromagnetic fields around the device. I'll calibrate the sensors to detect even the slightest deviations. If it's communicating, we won't miss a whisper. The lab buzzed with activity as preparations got underway. Technicians fine-tuned equipment, their movements precise, the air filled with the scent of overheating metal and the sharp tang of electrical discharge. Eli, overseeing the setup, ensured that each step of the plan was executed with meticulous attention to detail. Safety protocols in place? He asked, casting a scrutinizing glance over the array of devices encircling the artifact. Double-checked, Harlan confirmed, his gaze never leaving the monitors that now formed a semicircle around the glowing relic. His workstation emitted a soft glow, reflecting the intensity of the morning sun filtering through the lab's open doors. As the tests commenced, the artifact began to exhibit new behaviors. At first, it mirrored the light patterns projected onto it, its surface rippling like water under a gentle breeze. But as Jace introduced more complex sequences, the artifact's responses grew more elaborate, its colors richer and more varied. "It's not just mirroring now, it's almost like it's trying to speak in its own language of light," Jace murmured, fascination evident in his tone. Eli watched intently, his mind racing with possibilities. "Let's introduce variable environmental conditions. Simulate a storm, changes in air pressure, temperature fluctuations, anything that might trigger a more pronounced response." As the simulated storm began, with machines mimicking the sound of thunder and changes in atmospheric pressure, the artifact's glow intensified. It began to pulse in sync with the simulated lightning flashes, its light patterns becoming so complex they nearly dazzled the onlookers. "Recording all responses," Harlan stated, his voice steady despite the excitement of the moment. "Whatever story it's telling, we're capturing every word." The test reached its climax as the simulated storm peaked. The artifact's lights swirled in a hypnotic dance, creating a spectacle that left the team in awe. As the environmental changes ceased, the artifact gradually returned to a steady glow, as if it had settled back into a restful state after an intense conversation. "We've just scratched the surface," Eli concluded, stepping back to review the data flooding in. "What we learned today reshapes our understanding and potentially our future strategies." The team dispersed to analyze the results, each member aware that they were part of something unprecedented. Today's tests had not only deepened their understanding of the artifact but also revealed its potential to interact with and perhaps even manipulate its environment. The planning had been meticulous, and the payoff was profound, hinting at even greater revelations to come. In the cool afterglow of their breakthrough, the team regrouped to analyze the cascade of data they had collected. The lab was quiet, a stark contrast to the morning's orchestrated chaos, as each member delved into their specific realms of expertise, piecing together the artifact's complex language of light and energy. Eli stood by the main display, his eyes tracing the graphs and images that flickered across the screen. "Let's synthesize this data into something actionable," he directed, his voice low but clear, cutting through the concentration-filled silence. "We need to predict its responses based on our inputs, create a model that can guide our interactions going forward." Jace, surrounded by screens filled with coding sequences and spectral analysis, nodded without looking up. "I'm on it. I'll start by correlating the artifact's light patterns with our environmental simulations to find any predictive consistencies." Harlan adjusted his headset, tuning in to the micro-changes in the artifact's electromagnetic field that had been recorded during the tests. "I'll cross-reference these fluctuations with historical data we have on similar phenomena. There might be a pattern that we missed." The lab buzzed with a focused energy as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with shades of purple and gold. The fading light cast long shadows across the room, adding a dramatic tone to their urgent endeavors. As night fell, Eli convened a brief meeting to assess their progress. The crisp scent of the evening air mingled with the residual odor of solder and machine oil, a reminder of the day's relentless activity. "What do we have that can shape our next steps?" he asked, scanning the faces of his team. Jace was the first to respond, pointing to a series of interconnected graphs on his monitor. "There's a definite rhythm to its responses. It reacts more predictively under certain light frequencies combined with specific atmospheric conditions. It's almost musical the way it speaks through patterns." "Can we use that rhythm to our advantage?" Eli probed, intrigued by the notion of a communicative cadence. "Possibly," Jace mused. "If we can mimic its language, we might be able to not just understand but also influence its actions, steer them in a direction that's beneficial to us." Harlan chimed in. his data providing a crucial piece of the puzzle. The electromagnetic signatures it emits are key. They spike significantly during certain interactions, suggesting that it uses energy fields as part of its communication protocol. The discussion turned strategic as they considered their next move. We'll need a controlled environment, completely isolated, where we can simulate these conditions without external interference, Eli decided, his decision underpinned by a mix of caution and curiosity. The planning was meticulous, every variable considered, from the sequence of light exposure to the precise modulation of air pressure and temperature. They prepared an isolated chamber equipped with advanced monitoring tools, ensuring that every fluctuation, every gleam of light from the artifact could be analyzed and understood. As they readied for the tests, the air was thick with anticipation. The night enveloped the base in a blanket of stars, the universe watching silently as they prepared to converse with an ancient technology that might hold keys to understanding not just their world, but perhaps others beyond their wildest imaginations. Each member of the team felt the gravity of the moment, aware that they were on the brink of a discovery that could redefine the boundaries of human knowledge. As the final preparations were made for the crucial test in the isolated chamber, the air inside the lab was thick with tension and expectation. Eli, standing before his team, his expression a mask of resolve and anticipation, began the briefing with a tone that underscored the gravity of their undertaking. Today we might very well be on the brink of a new understanding, a breakthrough that could change everything we know about our place in the cosmos, Eli stated, his voice firm and inspiring. We've uncovered the language of this artifact. Now let's speak to it, not just as scientists, but as representatives of humanity. The team nodded, their faces a mixture of nerves and resolve. They were not just observers or experimenters anymore. They were part of a conversation that spanned across the barriers of time and space. In the test chamber, the artifact sat at the center, bathed in a controlled light that simulated the natural environmental conditions they had identified as communicative triggers. Jace, at the control panel, adjusted the settings, his hands steady despite the palpable tension. "Initiating sequence in 3, 2, 1, Jace announced, and with a soft click, the sequence began. The room darkened momentarily as the lights adjusted to replicate the dawn-to-dusk cycle they had observed to be most effective in previous tests. The artifact began to glow, its lights slowly pulsating in response to the environmental cues, each pulse stronger and more pronounced than the last. As the simulated day progressed, the artifact's responses became increasingly dynamic, its colors more vibrant. It was as if the device was waking up from a long slumber, recognizing the efforts of those around it to communicate in its native language. "Look at that," Harlan whispered, awe coloring his tone as he pointed to the screen showing a rapid series of energy spikes. "It's responding more actively than ever before." Eli watched, his heart pounding in his chest as he felt the first real stirrings of understanding between them and the ancient technology. "We're listening," he said quietly, almost to himself, "and we hear you." The climax of the test approached as the chamber simulated the setting sun, the lights dimming to twilight blues and purples. The artifact pulsed one last time, a brilliant display of light that filled the room with colors so intense they could feel the warmth on their faces. Then, as if understanding the effort and the intent behind the test, the artifact did something it had never done before. It stabilized, its light settling into a steady, gentle glow that seemed to acknowledge the presence of the team, the warmth of its light almost comforting. In that moment, Eli knew they had achieved something momentous. "We've done more than make contact," he addressed the team, his voice thick with emotion. "We've established a dialogue." As the team exited the chamber, the artifact remained glowing softly, a beacon of newfound connection between humanity and a relic of the cosmos. The night outside was clear, the stars shining down on them, silent witnesses to their achievement. "This is just the beginning," Eli mused aloud as they gathered outside, looking up at the sky. "Today we spoke to the stars, and something out there listened." Their journey with the artifact was far from over, but as they stood together under the starlit sky, they felt a profound sense of accomplishment and unity, a testament to humanity's enduring curiosity and undying hope. Under the starlit canvas of the night sky, Eli and his team gathered around the still-glowing artifact, the gentle illumination casting their shadows long and thin across the ground. The air was filled with a sense of anticipation and wonder, a palpable excitement that buzzed like the quiet before a storm. "We've initiated a dialogue with an ancient intelligence," Eli began, addressing his team with a solemnity befitting the moment. "What we do next will define not just our future, but potentially the future of humanity." Jace, ever the thinker, adjusted his glasses, reflecting on the data they'd gathered. "We have a responsibility here. This artifact, it's not just technology. It's a legacy, a custodian of cosmic balance. We need to ensure we're worthy of this gift." Harlan, who had always kept a practical perspective, added, "It's about more than just understanding. It's about respect. We've been given a tool that could help us make immense strides, but with great power comes great responsibility." The artifact continued to emit a soft, harmonious light, as if agreeing with their sentiments. Eli stepped closer, his eyes reflecting the artifact's serene glow. "This is a testament to our courage," he mused aloud. "Not just the courage to explore the unknown, but to engage with it, learn from it, and hopefully make the universe a slightly better place." The team nodded in agreement, their faces illuminated by the artifact's light, each member affected deeply by the journey they had undertaken together. They understood that this was merely the beginning of a much larger story, one filled with possibilities and responsibilities. Eli turned to face the team, his voice firm yet full of hope. "Let's continue this journey with the humility and diligence it deserves. We stand on the brink of a new dawn for humanity, a dawn that promises enlightenment not through conquest, but through cooperation and understanding." As they prepared to leave the site, Eli took one last look at the artifact. "You helped us reach out into the cosmos," he whispered to it, "and in return, you've shown us that we're not alone in this vast universe." The walk back to the base was quiet, each member of the team lost in thought, pondering the implications of their discoveries. The crisp night air was refreshing, the pathway lit by the soft glow of the moon, guiding them back safely like a celestial guardian. Back at the base, as they compiled their findings and documented their experiences, there was a collective sense of achievement and anticipation. They had crossed an astronomical threshold, and there was no turning back. In the final report, Eli penned a closing note. "In our quest to understand the cosmos, we discovered not just an ancient alien technology, but also a reminder of our place in the universe. This artifact, a beacon of knowledge and a relic of cosmic equilibrium, has offered us a chance to repay the courage of humanity by embracing our role as custodians of not just our world, but potentially others as well." As the sun rose, casting the first light on a new day, Eli and his team looked towards the horizon, ready to continue their journey into the unknown, guided by the light of an ancient star-born legacy. Their story was a testament to humanity's unyielding quest for knowledge, and a profound reminder that sometimes the answers we seek are not just about reaching out into the darkness, but also about listening to the whispers of light that dance across the cosmos.